Calling back to order the regular meeting of the Township Committee, Wednesday, September 18th, 2019. We are here tonight to celebrate two very happy occasions in the police department, but in the past week we also have had two somber occasions, the first of which is the memorial for 9/11, and we're going to have a reading in a moment related to that. The second is the passing of State Senator Anthony Bucco. Senator Bucco served us 21 years as senator. Before that, he was an alderman in Boonton, a mayor in Boonton, county freeholder, and assemblyman. And I just want to extend the condolences on behalf of the Township Committee to the Bucco family. And as we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, I ask that you keep the Bucco family in your thoughts. Thank you. Let's rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry, we're going to present the colors first. Excuse me.
Mark time, detail, halt, left, face, present, on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, on. Parade, rest.
Everyone be seated, please. As I stated a week ago, we remembered the 9/11 tragedy, and I was in synagogue this past weekend on Saturday, and my rabbi read a very nice reading, unbeknownst to many of us there, but he picked out a reading, and it was very touching and moving. And I asked Rabbi Nesson to come tonight to read it aloud to us. So I'd like to call up Rabbi Nesson, please.
Our world changed with the 9/11 attacks. We have seen how easily buildings can fall and how quickly lives can end. To those who died in the 9/11 attacks on our United States, remember the works of their hands and the message of their hearts. May their memories be sanctified with joy and love. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life, a living blessing in our midst. Grant the perfect rest among the souls of the righteous first responders who died in service to others, those who rushed in as others rushed out, at the World Trade Center, in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at the Pentagon, the trained and the untrained. May their memories be sanctified with joy and love. Comfort and strengthen the family and friends of those who died. Send healing to the survivors of the attacks who are living still with pain in their hearts. Heal the wounded of these attacks and bring them and their families comfort. Give us strength to face the memory of this day and the changes it made in our lives. And let us have compassion to continue to help each other.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence as we remember all of those who perished at 9/11. Thank you. Before we get to the police ceremonies, I'd like to ask for approval of minutes from the August 29th, 2019 regular and closed sessions. Will somebody move those, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And with that, I am going to turn it over to Chief DiCarlo for police presentations.
Hello, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us in tonight's police department ceremony to promote 2 officers and the swearing in of 2 new officers. My name is Mark DiCarlo, and I am the Morris Township Police Chief. I want to start by thanking the Morris Township Committee, members of the Morris Township Police Honor Guard, fellow members of the Morris Township Police Department, and friends and family. Thank you for joining us. First up will be the promotion of Lieutenant Robert Shear to the rank of Captain. Upon graduating... Upon graduating from York College of Pennsylvania with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice in 2003, Robert Shear attended the 62nd Basic Police Recruit class at the Morris County Police Academy under the alternate route program and graduated in December 2003. Robert was hired by the Morris Township Police Department as a probationary patrol officer in December 15, 2003. Patrolman Shear was assigned to the Patrol Division from 2003 to 2011. As a patrolman in 2006, Robert received an Order of Merit from the 200 Club for rescuing a victim trapped inside a structure fire. In 2011, Robert was assigned to the Detective Bureau, where he was responsible for criminal investigations and was assigned as the juvenile officer for the department. As a detective, Robert received a commendation for his role in a 9-year-old sexual assault investigation. When a suspect was identified, he was interviewed and ultimately confessed to several crimes, including the first-degree sexual assault of the 9-year-old. Detective Shear was assigned to the Morris County Prosecutor's Office Narcotics Task Force from 2014 to 2015. During this time, Detective Shear participated in several narcotics investigations, including a multi-state marijuana distribution network investigation which resulted in the seizure of 350 pounds of marijuana and $205,000 in cash. Robert also participated in Operation Coke Depot, which resulted in the seizure of 900 grams of cocaine and 11 vehicles. Detective Shear worked with the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office Heroin Initiative, which resulted in the arrest of 325 people and the seizure of 30 firearms and heroin with a street value of $350,000. Detective Shear received a life-saving award for his role in the life-saving efforts after a suicide attempt of a male individual in January of 2017. On February 20, 2017, Robert Shear was promoted to the rank of sergeant and was assigned to a patrol squad. Sergeant Shear was the administrative commander of the Emergency Services Unit and a domestic liaison officer during that time. In May of 2018, Robert Shear was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and after his assignment as a ship commander, he was designated the Operations Division Commander in charge of the Patrol Division January 1st, 2019. During my leave of 10-week training at the FBI Academy, Lieutenant Shear was assigned to the department's officer in charge and oversaw the agency's day-to-day operations. During his career, Robert has received several department awards, commendations, and letters of recognition. Robert's training and assignments include being a member of the Department Honor Guard Unit, handcuffing instructor, attended the Top Gun Narcotics Investigation School, Frontline Supervision School, and is a graduate of the prestigious New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police Command and Leadership School. Robert has attended over 1,700 hours of in-service training during his career. Robert resides in Sparta with his wife Erin and his sons Kellen, Grayson, and Naka. In his free time, Robert coaches wrestling at Eclipse Wrestling Club and coaches his sons in football, lacrosse, and wrestling. With the promotion of the rank of captain comes him being in charge of the operations division of the police department. Mayor Grosel and the Township Committee, I'm proud to have Robert Shear take his oath of office as captain of the Morris Township Police.
Thank you. Everybody's got hot-looking shirts on, huh? Over here on this side of your head. Left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in this state and the United States pursuant to the authority of the people, so help you God. You further solemnly swear that you will faithfully, justly, and impartially perform all the duties of office as captain of the police department of the Township of Morris to the best of your ability, so help you God. Congratulations.
Congratulations. You did a busy man tonight. Buy them all. You have to buy them all.
I can use the extra space.
Next will be the promotion of Lieutenant James Caruso to the rank of captain. James. Upon graduating from Rutgers University with a bachelor's degree in psychology and a minor study in criminal justice, James Caruso began his career at the Morris Township Police Department as a communications officer in October of 2005. After approximately 1 year of service as a communications officer, James was offered the opportunity to attend the 68th Morris County Basic Police Academy class that concluded in December of 2006. Upon graduating from the Police Academy, James was assigned to the Patrol Division, where he performed the various job functions of a patrol officer. In May of 2010, Officer Peroso received the Life-Saving Award for performing CPR and using a defibrillator on a Morris Township resident who suffered cardiac arrest while mowing his lawn. During his career, Officer Peroso has received numerous letters of commendations and recognition for his dedication to duty. Officer Peroso was selected to be a member of the Special Operations Unit, a unit that was responsible for high-risk calls for service, the execution of search and arrest warrants, and undercover surveillance details. Officer Peroso is a member of the Police Department's Honor Guard Unit. The unit performs officer funeral details, national holiday ceremonies, as well as special events in the Township of Morris. In October of 2012, Officer Peroso was assigned to the Detective Bureau, where he was responsible for more in-depth criminal investigations. Investigations including burglary, sexual assault investigations, narcotics offenses, and juvenile offenses. In 2014, Detective Peroso was assigned to a motor vehicle burglary and theft task force, where he worked alongside law enforcement officers from Morris, Essex, and Middlesex counties, as well as New York and New Jersey state police officers and deputies from the United States Marshal Service. This task force led to the arrest of a large-scale theft suspect who was charged with 26 counts of burglary to motor vehicles, 33 counts of theft, and 30 counts of criminal mischief. In 2016, Detective Peroso was assigned to the Morris County Prosecutor's Office to assist with a multi-county drug distribution investigation. This investigation led to the arrest of over 25 individuals. The task force recovered 1,400 poles of heroin, 55 grams of cocaine, and seized $33,500, 11 motor vehicles. In March of 2017, Officer Peroso was promoted to the rank of Patrol Sergeant, where he oversaw a squad of 6 patrol officers. This squad of officers led the department in criminal arrests and DWI apprehension. In May of 2018, Sergeant Peroso was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant, where he was assigned to the Detective Division. As a Detective Lieutenant and Support Services Division Commander, Lieutenant Peroso oversaw the Detective Bureau, the Crime Prevention Unit, School Resource Officer, along with our 6 Class 3 SLEO officers, the Records Bureau, and served as the Internal Affairs Commander. In November of 2018, Lieutenant Peroso, along with other members of the Detective Bureau, received the Grand Cordon Award for our agency and the Crime Stoppers Leaping Leo Award from the Morris County Sheriff's Office for their involvement in solving and bringing to justice 2 individuals who were responsible for an armed residential burglary where a gunshot was fired. In the spring of 2019, Lieutenant Peroso attended and graduated from the New Jersey State Chiefs of Police Association Commanding Leadership Academy, where he studied theories and concepts of leadership used by our nation's military forces. James resides in Morris Plains with his wife Kristen and their 3 daughters, Madeline, Peyton, and Elise, where he enjoys spending free time with friends and family. Officer Peroso participates in the Police Unity Tour every May, which is an event that raises money and awareness for police officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty. With the promotion of captain, James will be in charge of our administrative division of the police department. Mayor Griesel and the Township Committee, proud to have James Peroso take his oath of office as captain of Morris County.
This could be a bit of a trick. Mom. Close enough. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in this state and the United States pursuant to the authority of the people, so help you God. I do. You further solemnly swear that you will faithfully, justly, and impartially perform all the duties of office of captain of the Police Department of the Township of Morris to the best of your ability, so help you God. I do. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next will be the swearing in of our new officer, Patrolman Catherine Ridley, badge number 167. Catherine Ridley grew up in the cities of Montclair and East Orange, New Jersey. She graduated from the Wardlaw Hartridge School in 2008 and was awarded the Senior of the Year Peer Leadership Scholarship Award for exhibiting exceptional community service and maintaining academic excellence. While attending high school, Catherine was a professional dancing artist and teaching assistant for 10-plus years with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater in New York City. She performed at multiple venues, including the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, the New York City Center, Carnegie Hall, and the Kennedy Center for the Arts in Washington, D.C., where former Presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton were in attendance. After completing high school, Catherine continued her education at the University of New Haven in Connecticut, where she majored in criminal justice and investigative services. In 2009, she returned to her home state and took courses at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, all while working part-time at Blockbuster as a shift leader. During the summer months of 2007 through 2013, Catherine also worked all over the tri-state area as a group leader with Alvin Ailey Arts and Education Program, where she mentored, disciplined, and provided guidance to underprivileged children the ages of 10 to 14 years of age through dance instruction. She then began working at Sports Authority in Clifton, New Jersey as a customer service manager for approximately 4 years. Catherine then received a promotion and began working as the operations manager at the Sports Authority in Wayne. 2015, she then received the opportunity to work as a correctional officer with the Essex County Department of Corrections, where she was stationed in Newark, New Jersey for approximately 3 months until she was hired by the East Orange Police Department in July of 2016. Upon graduating from the Essex County College Police Academy, Catherine was assigned to the Day Patrol Division as a patrol officer. In September of 2017, Catherine was assigned to the School Squad Unit and received her certification as a School Resource Officer upon completion of a 40-hour training course conducted by the National Association of School Resource Officers. She received specialized school-based law enforcement policing methods to promote safer schools and safer children. Catherine is also certified as a LEAD instructor, which is a program that educates students from grades 6 to 8 about the dangers of substance abuse, peer pressure, and social media. Catherine strives to maintain a reputation as a respectful, dedicated, and determined police officer that focuses on maintaining order and public safety, while promoting positive community relations. Catherine also strives to continue to foster positive leadership skills and serves as a mentor to the youth. As a young female officer, she also recognizes how important it is to be a positive female role model and encourages young women to cultivate self-empowerment, self-worth, self-confidence, along with strong leadership and communication skills, which will help reinvent themselves as positive contributions to society. Catherine has completed online classes at Eastern Gateway Community College, earning credits equivalent to obtaining her associate's degree. Catherine plans to continue online coursework at George Washington University to obtain her bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Catherine is passionate about maintaining proper health and physical fitness, enjoys going to the gym on a regular basis in her free time. Catherine enjoys spending time with her family, dancing, reading a good book, or watching Netflix. Catherine currently lives in South Orange with her wonderful husband of 2 years, Raheem, and her dog, Chase. Mayor Grisel and the Township Committee, and please introduce Trophy Catherine Ridley, badge number 1.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in this state and the United States pursuant to the authority of the people so help you God? I do. Do you further solemnly swear that you will faithfully, justly, and impartially perform all the duties of patrolman, patrolwoman of the Police Department of the Township of Morris to the best of your ability so help you God? Congratulations. Next time, Velcro.
Next will be the swearing in of our newest officer, Patrolman Ryan Macarico, badge number 158. Ryan? Ryan Macarico was born in Livingston, New Jersey, and moved to Hapakon, New Jersey when he was 3 years old. He graduated from the Hapakon High School in 2009. While attending Hapakon High School, Ryan enjoyed boxing for the Dover Boxing Club. Immediately after high school, Ryan enrolled in the County College of Morris, where he obtained an associate's degree in criminal justice. After college, Ryan decided to challenge himself and start his very own business, small business, called Flex Nutrition. He opened his first retail location in Sparta, New Jersey, and then a year later opened up his second location in Ledgewood, New Jersey. Both locations were successful. However, Ryan knew his true purpose was to become a police officer. He sold both locations, was accepted into the Bergen County Police Academy alternate route program. On June 13, 2019, Ryan graduated from the Bergen County Police Academy, class 122, as a squad leader. During Ryan's free time, he likes to spend time with his family and friends, ride his Harley-Davidson motorcycle, lift weights, and go hiking. Ryan currently lives in Hapakon, but is currently looking to purchase a home in Morris County. He's joined here tonight by his father, Carlos, mother, Eva, and brother, Eric. Mayor Grizel and the Township Committee, I'm pleased to introduce to you Patrolman Ryan Macarico.
Got you surrounded, I think. Left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand. Do solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and to the governments established in this state and the United States, pursuant to the authority of the people, so help you God. I do. Do further solemnly swear that you will faithfully, justly, and impartially perform all the duties of officer of patrolman in the Police Department of the Township of Morris to the best of your ability, so help you God. I do. Congratulations. Congratulations again.
I will reiterate what I've said many, many times before. We have the finest police department in the entire state of New Jersey. Today we have two brand new captains who are one step away from the chief. They will be running our department, young men who we look forward to having with us for many, many years to come. And our two new patrolmen are just starting out on their journey, and as time goes by, they will be going along in the ranks and doing all the things that they need to do. But what's interesting, we have two gentlemen in the back, Stephen Pisciuto. Steve, raise your hand, please. And that's Joe Pisciuto, I apologize, and Stephen Went. And these are people who were interviewed by the police committee this week and have been taken on as police persons. They will start their school, and they'll be gone for 22 weeks. And we look forward to having a ceremony for them when they come back. So, gentlemen, God bless you both, and good luck. Thank you.
Mr. Mancuso and I serve on the police committee, and we're lucky to participate in all the interviews of the officers. Before I make my remarks, I'm going to move forward in the agenda. I'm going to ask them to move forward to resolutions 174-19 and 175-19, and I'll read those aloud together. That's the appointment of Joseph Pisciuto and Stephen Wint as probationary police officers, Morris Township Police Department, effective September 30th, 2019. Just wanted to welcome you two gentlemen on board. You join a very fine police force led by Chief DiCarlo. I've said this many times through the year because we've had a lot of celebrations, that there are a lot of things that make Morris Township the great place that it is to live in. I don't think any resident in Morris Township would dispute that this is a fantastic place to live and raise your children. And one of the factors that make it such a great place is the quality of the police force and the kind of policing that we do in Morris Township. So I urge both of you guys, when you get out of school, as well as the two new patrol men and patrol women that we have tonight, to get to know our residents. I urge you, when you see people on the street, get out of your cars, stop and say hello, introduce yourself, hand out your business cards. All our officers should have their own business cards now. Introduce yourselves to the residents. Tell them about yourself and learn something about the community. We really live in a great and special place, and I look forward to all of you keeping it that way and helping us improve the quality of life here in Morris Township. So thank you very much, and look forward to a long careers for all of you. So I did move forward resolutions 174, 175-19. I'd like a second to move those, please. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you very much. With that, I am going to ask for a 5-minute recess to let everybody vacate the room. But again, thanks for everybody for coming tonight and sharing this great occasion.
They can stay. They can stay.
What?
They can stay.
They can stay, yes. You can stay. We're going to continue the meeting in 5 minutes. Yes, sorry. Before everybody leaves, sorry, keep your places. I forgot that I was supposed to call back. Retire the color guard. So please, everybody just stand for a second, and we're going to retire the colors.
Fourth on. Right face. Forward.
Very good. So we're going to reconvene at 7:35. Thank you. Calling back to order the regular meeting of the Township Committee, September 18th, 2019. Next on our agenda is public comment and inquiry. So we've created a second public commentary session. We used to have it just at the end of the meeting, but we've created one in the beginning so the people who have to leave can get their comments out. So I welcome anybody who wants to speak to come to the podium. Please state your name and address, please. And I'd like to just announce the speaker's time limitation. I, Jeffrey Grazel, announce that in order to give interested parties a fair chance to be heard, each speaker should comment for an unassignable period of 5 minutes before turning the microphone over to the next speaker, and that after each has had one turn, a person may be heard for an additional unassignable period of 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, Charlene Anderson, 7 Emmett Avenue. The Collinsville Playground, I spoke about that in August. It still is not resolved unless things have changed in the last few days. The tape has been up and off, and I understand there's not correct drainage. For 4 years, I have been complaining about my neighbors and their noise, volleyball, and lights. The record should show that I and my mother at 15 have complained and complained and complained. We've had police officers come up several times. I believe it's Mr. Green for property management, whichever person it is for property management, come and look at the property and see nothing wrong. I got so annoyed about 2 weeks ago because I live at 7 and I could hear the neighbors at 17 and their noise. The police came and shut it down. And that's when I wrote my letter to the Township Committee, which I believe you all have seen. It really annoys me that I could have complained for 4 years and nothing happened. I know. Common sense says to me, I would think the police having to come there several times a month for 4 years would make one of them say, hey, something's wrong. Also, once again, as I said, I believe it's Green. I had him come up and look at the property. No problem. Again, not until I wrote the letter to the township did Mr. Quinn recognize that there was a possible violation, and he found out and shared with me the information that to have that recreational facility, which it was named, you have to have 25 feet from your rear setback and 10 feet in. Nobody has seen that all the time. I am truly annoyed about that. Also, I complained about my neighbor's fence at 5 Emmett. It's falling, it's dilapidated, it's got holes in it. At least it's primarily falling toward his house. I had, is that Clark? I don't know which one I had come up and look at the fence and look at everything. He says to me, I called him and asked, I believe I called him and asked him what happened. He didn't see the gaping hole in the fence that the animals, through which the animals come. I got zillions of groundhogs, a couple of fox. I even had a bobcat in my backyard. He didn't see the hole. I sent him the picture. And my neighbor on my property borders that Corey Road complex thing, whatever it is. During one of the storms last winter, a tree fell down and broke the fence wide open. Yes, they did come and move the tree, but the boards are all over. I had to push the boards back on their property, and I waited till the spring. I didn't really expect them to do anything during the winter. They haven't done anything. I complained about that, and I've only heard that they're going to, that the township or whatever committee it is going to investigate it. This week, they took the broken boards and crisscrossed them over the hole because I've been having trespassers walk through because it's a shortcut. Just really unhappy, and I wanted to, thanks, sir, to let the township know, and I appreciate Honorable Grazel for taking the time to pay attention to it, and Mr. Quinn and God, Kathy, I can't think of your name. Mrs. Wilson, that's it.
So first, I'd like to say thank you for coming out tonight and sharing your experiences. It's very important, and thank you for your letter. It's always best to any resident who has an issue to write and, again, to then come and explain yourself before the board. It's very helpful to hear people in person as opposed to just getting the communication over email, so thank you for doing both. First, with relation to the playgrounds, I think on behalf of the entire Township Committee, we all feel terribly about how slow that has gone. Unfortunately, the contractor has not been up to par, and at the end of the day, what's that? Yep. At the end of the day, you know, the person at the top has to take the blame, so I'm very sorry for what's occurred and the slowness of it, but they were out today to finish off the surfacing, and we are still very hopeful within the next few weeks we will have a grand opening at the playground.
And I shall presume that the drainage issue that's rumored, I don't know it for a fact, but there's a rumor in the neighborhood that that water puddles and it's not proper drainage there. And I'd also like to know, since we're talking about playgrounds, has this contractor done all of our playgrounds? Are there other playgrounds that have issues, or just our one playground?
If I'm correct, this is the first time this contractor's done any work in Morris Township, right? That's correct. This is the first time we have utilized this contractor. And the way the contracting process works, you have to take the lowest responsible bidder. And based on the references we got, we had believed that he was responsible, and he is completing the project this week.
So does anyone else have, any other neighborhood having the same problem with an unfinished playground for so very long?
Randolph?
Randolph's got a major issue.
Oh.
Not with this company, but with...
Yeah, I mean, we've heard, Mr. Quinn's heard from the administrator in Randolph that they too have been having problems finishing off their playground with their contractor as well.
Randolph?
In Randolph, yes. So there's no other playgrounds in the township that have been upgraded recently like Collinsville House.
Ours have.
Butterworth was.
Butterworth, when?
Okay, thank you.
So, Charlene, before you go, so with regard to the other things, so you know that we issued a notice of violation for the volleyball court. You know that I made a personal trip. You weren't home, but I did made a personal trip to view what's going on there, and Ms. Wilson did as well. And unless there's a notification that something like the volleyball court in somebody's backyard is happening, I can't trespass on somebody's property to view it without anybody's permission, unless there's a complaint like that, and the notice of violation that was issued. So I did take a peek through somebody's backyard, not on their specific property, through your backyard, actually,
okay, that's no problem.
when I walked on the property to meet you. So again, we're working on all of those things. With regard to the fence issue, and I don't want to belittle your complaints about the holes in the fence, but you should know that you have a right yourself to put up your own fence if your neighbor's fence, if the view of your neighbor's fence bothers you, right? You could put up something of your own to block the view of it. That's your prerogative. I'm just letting you know that it's your prerogative to put up your own fence to block the view of your neighbor's dilapidated fence.
The last thing I forgot, my mother at 15 has a handicapped parking space in front of her, as was in front of her home, as in the letter. Cars can park in front of her mailbox, and often do. And I presume you know that the United States Postal Service does not have to deliver to a mailbox. We've had, pretty much fairly consistent mail deliverers, and they pretty much know that my mother's a senior, so they do get out and put it in the box, which she does appreciate it. But they don't have to, and some of the newer ones or some of the substitutes will not deliver when the mailbox is blocked. I asked whoever the traffic person is, I had the traffic person come down to my mom's home and ask, could the lines be shifted? I say just a foot.
Yeah, so before you go on, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Mr. Quinn told me that the police department actually has already come out to take a look at it, and they are going to take that recommendation, right, of shifting the spot so that nobody can actually park adjacent to it and block the mailbox.
Thank you. But that shouldn't have been known by the person from the township who came down to see it himself?
The ordinance has specific meets and bounds for that parking spot that are measured, so if he's looking at the ordinance, it's gotta be so many feet, and we're going to do a little waiver with that, so,
But wouldn't the ordinance measurement begin with my mother's property line,
no, it begins with the street corner.
with the street sign?
Street corner.
Street corner, okay, then I understand the difference. Thank you.
Mayor, may
Yes, does anybody else want to comment? Charlene, before you go away?
I also want to thank you for your comments and for coming here today to speak to us, as well as sending your correspondence. With regard to the playground, it is as frustrating to us, maybe not as much as your frustration that playground has not been completed as of yet. We did look at every possible avenue to get the contractor to come up to complete the project. One of the recourses that we would have is to go after their bonding company if they didn't finish the project. We'd rather not have to go down that road, and hopefully they do complete the project. Another safety measure that we have is that we're allowed to retain some of the money that's due to them to make sure that everything is done properly, so that the drainage is done properly, that the equipment is installed properly. So we have some safety measures in there to protect not only the residents but the township from any issues occurring after the fact.
Isn't the township kind of leaving itself open to a problem, having equipment used that's not properly completed? When I came here tonight, there were children on the playground. So, just wanted to mention it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just, Charlene, one last comment for you. You can sit down. About a month ago, somebody asked me what the hardest job, part of the job of being mayor is. And what I told them is there's not anything specific that's very difficult, but the amount of things that go on a daily basis in Morris Township, the little things like you're talking about, are just, that matter to people, matter to individuals. It's just tremendous. And it's very helpful that you wrote the letter to us to let everybody on this dais know about the issues and bring it to our attention. That was very helpful, and I recommend that other people do that too. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You can come up.
Oh.
Hi, my name's Michelle Holland. I live on Brookfield Way. I've written you, Mayor Graybill, email concerning power outages, and thank you for your response. Public speaking is probably my biggest fear, but I just feel compelled to keep talking about this issue. My family and I have lived here for 2 years now. The first year we came, we lost power for a week, incurred a lot of expenses from that. But more than the expense, it's just, I'm just really disappointed with the unreliability of it, and it happens in the summer. We'll be eating dinner and all of a sudden not have power. My husband travels a lot, so besides not wanting to spend the money for a generator, not having it, we pay our taxes, we pay our electric bill. I don't feel like I should have to get a generator, nor can I get one right now. But I just feel like I know that you're limited in what you could do and the pressure you could put on the JP&L, but I wish there was some sort of pressure we could put on them, even if, say, we join the New Jersey Aggregate, the cooperative. And while I know you pointed out that they'd still be in charge of the infrastructure, which is a problem, and they should pay it because the CEO gets compensated obscenely. Their stock is up. I mean, this is just a problem of greed. I don't see any other thing. My mother lives in a third world country, and she has more reliable service than we have. Other people live in the Northeast, other people have snow, other people have manholes and salt. I mean, it's just, I don't know why it's such a problem here other than they're just being irresponsible. So, maybe if we could even just say and talk about joining the cooperative, at least if we're not going to get great service, we're not lining their pockets. I don't really know what else to do. I mean, maybe you could give me some pointers. Is this something to speak to the governor about, senators, Congressman Sherrill? Like, I don't know who.
So the first thing you do is all public utilities are regulated by the Board of Public Utilities of the state of New Jersey, and you can go on to the BP, they're called BPU. You can go onto the BPU website and file an online complaint, and you can write a letter and send it to the BPU.
I feel like that hasn't gone anywhere. and other
Ni-
people have done that.
I'm just saying, it'll,
Two responses.
yeah, they'll write back to you. The BPU will send you a response. I actually wrote BPU about something else personally, about the cable company, and I got a response back. So they do send you an email back and, address your concern. About a month ago, we met with JCP&L. So myself and Administrator Quinn went over to JCP&L headquarters, which is actually located right here in Morris Township on Madison Avenue. They debriefed us on the power outage that happened in early August, and we had a long discussion about the improvements they're making to the grid. A couple interesting statistics that we learned that day is on what they call blue sky days, right? When no rain, no wind, no nothing. About 40, I think it was 35 to 40% of the outages on blue sky days are caused by trees. That's just decide that that's the day they're going to die and fall down on a wire. And that's nothing any of us can do. We live in a place with a lot of trees, and that's one of the prices we pay. We also learned that they are making system improvements so that when a wire might go down and trip a switch, is that a breaker? They're putting in what they call trip savers, I think they call them, which automatically recloses a switch. So, a whole line might go out because a tree went down. This can automatically reset the switch to allow power to go in certain directions. So those are improvements that they're going to make. They're actually going to be here. They committed to coming to our October meeting. So on October 16th at our next meeting, JCP&L will be here, and their representative will be able to answer questions. They just made a presentation in Morristown, and our regional representative, as well as a system engineer, were at that meeting to answer all the public questions. So if you can make it back on October 16th.
I definitely will. About
you
the
should.
trees, I have a question. Is there something the city could do to, like, do a survey of what trees look like potentially harmful and that are by the lines? And I mean, I have one right by my house. It looks scary.
Okay, so Mr. Quinn's going to answer that question for you.
They are doing that. They just received authorization from the Board of Public Utilities, and they just initiated a project. They can only go 15 feet from the wires to trim back, so they have a very enhanced forestry program to do it. What the BPU has now allowed them to do is to expand that, and when they're finding trees, especially ash trees, that are beyond that 15-foot, is to speak to the homeowners and seek permission to take those trees down. So many trees that they feel are a threat to the wires, if the homeowner gives them permission to take the trees down, they're going to do that. That's also very beneficial for the township because of all the ash trees that are going to come down, and the ones that are in the right of way, we would have to take them down. They're going to take them down, so we'll see some cost savings. But it's a program that began in August. You'll see a lot of trees with pink ribbons on those. Those have been tagged to be taken down. So if you have those in your neighborhood, you see them. I can notify you, take a look. Is it on the same street as side of the wires?
Yeah, I'm at 4 Brookfield Way, and there's a big pine tree that's just, it looks, I mean, when it's windy, it looks...
Is it within 15 feet of the wires?
Yes.
Okay. We'll take a look. I'll ask them to have their forestry division take a look at that. And we'll also do an outage history. One of the issues that we have up in your neighborhood is the trees. Okay. Often trees that are on private property that come down and take that. But hopefully this new program, they'll be taking down a lot of the ash trees, and then also the trees that they feel may come down or could be a threat to the wires, that once they have that homeowner's permission to do. So that's going to be a fairly large program that we're going to be seeing going on for the next 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Rizzo, for responding.
Sure. Yes, and I know we conversed a couple times, and you referenced in the beginning your suggestion that we look at an energy aggregation. It is something that we've talked about doing, but again, even if we went to energy aggregation, JCP&L would still be managing the grid, and we still have the same issues. One additional thing that I was going to mention before, in addition to the trees on blue sky days, the other thing that makes the system go out are short circuits caused by squirrels. So we live in an area that has a lot of squirrels, and what I learned that day, even though I'm an engineer, that the wires that carry the electricity are bare. There's no covers to the wires that carry the electricity up in the air, which is why they tell you not to touch down wires, because they're really live, bare wires with no plastic coating whatsoever. So when the squirrels touch them in a certain way and then touch the circuit as they're going from the pole to the wire, a squirrel can short circuit the system. So one of the other things they're putting up is what they call squirrel guards. So they're going to be going up and putting up these plastic things that have certain separation from the pole, so that when the squirrel climbs from the pole onto the wire, it'll climb onto the plastic first, so that the squirrel can't touch the live wire and the circuit at the same time. And so we're hoping that's going to help too. So we are looking, or not we are, but JCP&L is looking at system improvements because they're aware of the complaints too.
Okay.
But again, come back October
I will.
16th,
I
and thank
definitely
you for
will.
coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jim O'Reilly, 50 Independence Way. Just wondering, the whole issue of vaping came up, I think, about May, and there was some discussion of revisiting it in September. But since then, most recently, I think the governor or the legislature has said that they will take measures about vaping. Does anybody know where the issue stands now and how it will affect us?
So, what's that? Yeah, there is a governor's task force that just this past week was formed to take a look into the issue of vaping. And I just saw the press release a couple days ago, and you can go online and look for the governor's vaping task force and everything they're going to take a look at. Everything that you've heard about suggesting about banning flavors or banning vaping completely is just talk right now. It's something that they're thinking about. The one bill that we had talked about earlier in the year about possession, that Assemblyman Bucco had brought and put forward, hasn't gotten out of committee yet, so there hasn't been support for that for some reason. So there's been a lot of talk around it, but so far no action. I can tell you from the township's perspective, one of the things that I promised residents when we had that discussion earlier in the year is that the township was going to still move forward and look at vaping and see what we could do around it. And we have our own little group that's taking a look at vaping education as one of the issues that came up, and a possible treatment program that we can offer people who do have issues. So we are looking at things locally that we can do to address the problem.
Do you think those will wait on whatever the state does, or do you think you're going ahead and studying the issue anyway?
I don't plan on waiting personally. I'd like to see us move forward, but it takes a consensus of this governing body as to what we can do.
Right.
So, Mr. Jorpy.
And Jim, the Food and Drug Administration is also looking into vaping on a federal level.
Right.
That announcement came out last week, and they're supposed to be rolling out a proposed rule in the coming weeks or months in regards to vaping, specifically flavored e-cigarettes.
So I guess we proceed on the local level with a study, and then also
And
keep
as
an
the
eye
mayor
out.
said, Mr. O'Keefe, there's a special committee has been formed
Right.
at the state level, and it's only been promulgated the last
Right,
week or
right,
so.
right.
So once we see where that's going, we'll have some more information for you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We missed you last month, Mr. O'Reilly, so glad to see you back. You're here, you just didn't answer a question. Yeah.
Hi, Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. Quick question. When you met with JCP&L, did the topic of the sort of what I call like the exploding manholes come up in Morristown at all? Did they touch upon that? And I know it's not in the township, but did that come up as...
It came up. I did ask the question. They said that they're still investigating, and they didn't want to give a reason just yet until their investigation was complete. But they are looking into it.
They are, okay.
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, doesn't, that particular issue, aside from the township's responsibility, I guess, with the library property, where there was an issue, I guess, a number of years ago, but is there any other parts of the township that have been impacted by that, or is that all just basically resided within the town? That whenever,
I don't understand the question.
I'm not sure I understand you.
The circuits.
the circuits, yeah, has there been...
We don't have an event circuit.
There's no, okay, thank you. The only other topic I want to bring up is just a concern with the new Con Road that cuts through, that you can get off of Madison Avenue and get down to Park Avenue on. As you're driving into that, I might be wrong, but I didn't see, there's no sort of signage, and I don't know if there can be, in terms of alerting drivers so that that's actually a traction line that pedestrians use. So, I mean, the railroad tracks are there and the arms for the train, but there's no sort of indicator to someone driving that that's actually used by pedestrians right on the other side. So I don't know if that's something that's out of our domain because it's on or near a railroad track, but I would think if something could be looked at there, if that was, I think that might be a...
Are you saying there's no signage on the Hovnanian side of the fence? Is that what you're talking about?
As you're crossing over the tracks to enter the Hovnanian property.
Oh, to enter the Hovnanian property.
Right, you're just driving along.
Not
You're
coming
crossing
out.
the tracks, but there could be kids on bikes, or could be, it's a pedestrian traction line there. I don't think there's any way to actually know that. And on the other side, that was my next point, is that on the other side of the fence, there are 2 stop signs. So if you're exiting the Hovnanian property, there are 2 stop signs, but I don't know if there's code or regulations how high they have to be. They're sort of locked off and down at about this height. There's a fence there that I think is sort of fixed. So I don't know if maybe increase signage like that, or anything we can do to sort of alert drivers that are entering the property that actually is a publicly used sort of exercise path, recreational path. I think would be helpful.
So just so you know, we've talked about the quiet zone for a couple of years since the project was approved. It's something that we're trying to get accomplished. We received word this past week that NJDOT, New Jersey Transit, will begin the work shortly. So we're having a pre-construction meeting on the quiet zone, and what that entails is putting up new safety gates. There's going to be a new type of crossing there, where I think the rails comes down on both sides, so there's no way of getting around the crossing, and that will allow them to stop blowing the horns. But part of that roadway improvement, or roadway/railway improvement, is they're going to come in and do an assessment of the entire intersection.
Oh, great.
And so when they do that, they will tell us exactly what we need to do to make it the ultra-safe crossing that it needs to be in order to meet the quiet zone requirements.
Thank you for that update. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Road Triniment, 47 Skyline Drive. At the bottom of Skyline Drive, I don't know if you're familiar with the street, it kind of forks and connects into Mount Campbell. And there's no, when people are coming off at 40 plus miles an hour from Mount Campbell, we've lived there almost 20 years, I should have come to you 15 years ago about this. People are coming flying off, including sometimes us, and we stop at, this fork. But there's no yield sign or anything like that. And there's been numerous times when we and neighbors have, I suspect there's probably been accidents there. We've had some very close, dangerous calls, people that are flying off there at 40. So I'd love to have like a yield sign where somebody knows what the right of way is. So my question is, who can I speak to, or us and the neighbors in the town? Where does somebody even begin to contact to find out if somebody from the town can come over and take a look at it?
You're starting at the right spot, but the police department would be the one to make that assessment.
Okay.
And Mr. Quinn points out that it's the state road, 202 is a state road.
Right.
So any changes to entrances or exits off of the state road require state approval as well.
So it's actually.
I know exactly where I know exactly
it's
where.
It's actually up on Skyline Drive.
Yeah, no, it's on Skyline Drive, but it's adjacent to the state road,
Sure.
So they would have to weigh in. But you make a very good point. I know exactly the issue you're talking about.
Yeah.
That people can come both ways and nobody really knows who has the right of way.
Mr. Quinn, if the fork that I'm talking about, a place where somebody would naturally maybe want to consider putting a yield sign, is about 40, 50 feet off of Mount Campbell. It's actually on Skyline Drive, well into it. That would still involve the county in that point?
No, it would involve the township.
Township. So I could call somebody at the police department?
We have it on record now. We have your.
Oh, good.
We have your request on record. You're good to go. Mr. Quinn.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you do want to follow up in a month or so, feel free to write to myself, and I'll forward it on to Mr. Quinn, or write to Mr. Quinn directly.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to be heard? Yes, sir. Again, state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Ted Lestrange. I'm not a resident of the township. My address is 43 Prospect Hill Road, Cuddybackville, New York. This is way off topic, if it's okay, and it's not good news. I've entitled this Genocide by Scalpel, because that's the title given by one of the investigators into forced organ harvesting in China. Your updated research concludes China's hospitals transplant between 60,000 and 100,000 vital human body organs each year. But China has no real organ donation program. Here in the US, with the most sophisticated organ transplant system, a patient can wait 2 to 3 years just for a matching organ to become available. China, the waiting time is measured in weeks. An organ transplant tourist, including one from the Township of Mars, can arrange a specific date for their operation. So that effectively means that someone will be dispatched on their behalf on that date. It's a cultural taboo to donate one's organs after death in China. What's the source of these organs? Translation of these facts equates to tens of thousands of prisoners of conscience each year being killed for the organs. Most of these prisoners of conscience are Falun Gong practitioners, but also Tibetans, Uyghurs, and house Christians. They're routinely blood tested and their organs examined while held in China's forced labor camps, detention centers, and public jails. I have a quote. On June 13, 2016, the U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed Resolution 343, which in its summary section, quote, condemns the practice of state-sanctioned forced organ harvesting in the People's Republic of China, close quote. European Parliament has also passed similar resolutions. This has been happening for over 20 years. There's still a deadly silence on this issue, and that's why I come before you, the elected and respected representatives of the community, to rake out the heavy burden on this genocide as acknowledged by the House. China has total control of its own media and way beyond that. So it comes down to word of mouth to bolster that. Many dedicated researchers have gathered an enormous amount of data from current and archived hospital websites, local media reports, medical journals, and other evidence for the over 1,000 hospitals in China that perform these organ transplants. And so I brought along a package of materials for your attention and a proclamation request. And I thank you very much for your...
And just to be clear, what are you requesting of the governing body?
It's a proclamation.
A proclamation.
Sure, sir.
Very good. We'll accept your materials. Thank you.
Perfect. Yep.
You can hand them to the clerk here and we'll get them distributed.
Thank you, sir.
And is your contact information in there?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. Well, yeah. Very good. Does anybody else in the public need to be heard at this time? And seeing none, I will move to close the public portion. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. We're going to move on to ordinances for introduction. And we have 4 ordinances here, and we also have our township engineer who's going to come forward to help explain these to both the township committee and to the public. This is Mr. Jim Slate, who's a township engineer. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Mills to introduce ordinance 23-19. Should we introduce all 4 together, Tim? Or just one at a time? Just one at a time. We need to one at a time.
Yeah,
Okay, and then we'll...
For the sake of clarity,
Yes.
and I would point out that with respect to each, Mayor, it will be further considered for public hearing, second reading, and final passage on October 16th at 7 o'clock at the Municipal Building. 23-19, amending Chapter 95, Article 2, Section 6, zoning map, to designate Block 10103, Lot 3, from the RH20 zone to the OSGU zone of the Code of the Township of Morris. It is the jail. And I'd ask you to call for a motion and a second, and then Mr. Slate.
Correct. We'll have a first and a second, then a public discussion, and then we'll have a vote. So any motion? Thank you. Thank you. So we have a first and a second. Mr. Slate, can you explain the ordinance to the public?
Yes, so during the affordable housing review, one of the items that we noted that the jail site was currently zoned as RH20. That was an affordable housing zone from years ago. To my knowledge, none of any other properties in the township are zoned RH20, but the proper zoning for the jail would be OSGU, open space government use, and this is really just something to clean up the tax maps. As we discussed at the planning board, we're looking to further, eliminating RH20 zone from the zoning ordinance. Just want to confirm that there's, nothing that has been. I did check with the assessor, and she did confirm that there were no other properties that were listed in her records as RH20. So
part of the responsibility of TCC will take a look at that and see what modifications need to be to just eliminate that formal language that's in Chapter 95. But this is just a request to correct the tax map and change zone from RH20 to OSGU.
And can you explain to the public what RH20 stands for and what it means?
RH20 would be 20 units to the acre. It's very dense housing, more so than I think anything that was constructed, in the township. But it's something that it may have stemmed from the second round of affordable housing.
Right.
And
the RH part of the RH20 is for residential housing.
Correct.
At
Residential
a
housing, 20
units per acre.
to the acre.
And as Mr. Slate just mentioned, myself and Deputy Mayor Wilson sit on the planning board as well. And when we had this discussion with the planning board, I suggested, as Mr. Slate just said, that we get rid of RH20 completely from our zoning because there are no properties that fall under RH20, so we shouldn't even have it on the books. And the planning board's going to take a look at that going forward. But this tonight is just looking at the jail and moving the jail out of that zone that's it's not in a proper zone into its proper zone. Does anybody on the Township Committee have questions for Mr. Slate?
No. Just a point of clarification. Are you saying that the planning board will make a recommendation on eliminating the RH20 zone?
The TCC, Technical Coordinating Committee, which consists of myself, the board attorney, and the board planner, we will take a look at the specific language and draft a recommendation for the planning board to consider and recommend to the Township Committee.
Thank you.
Very good. So with that, I'm going to call for a vote, please.
Mr. Arbenidi?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yeah.
Ms. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes.
Yes. Mr. Mills, 2419?
Thank you, Mayor.
Can I-
Entitled amending Chapter 95.
All right, John, hold on 1 second.
I would just, before we go into Resolution 2419, I would like to explain something about it, and I would ask that possibly we rescind the ordinance and do not vote on it. We have an ordinance in town.
The record first. Hold on a second. For a point of order, do we have to
I think
first read it into the record?
Yeah, but moved and seconded, and then, I'm sorry,
What's the correct order as to what Mr. Mancuso said?
Well, right now it exists only on the agenda, so someone's got to move it and second it, and then you could have call for some discussion.
Okay. So I understand where you want to go. With all due respect to your position, and I respect it, this did come from the planning board as a recommendation that we take a look. Sure. I think we have to respect the planning board and their guidance, that we at least take a look at it before we rescind it. I think that's fair, and let the public have a look. And we'll have a discussion in a minute. Sure. And we can all vote it down, or rescind it, or take away the introduction then. But I think we owe it to the planning board to have to bring it forward. So, Mr. Mills, please, 2419.
Yes, by title, amends Chapter 95, Article 9, Section 54, subsection B, and 95, Article 9, 54, subsection E, paragraph 2 of the Code of the Township of Morris concerning the size of required off-street parking.
Very good. So let me have a first and a second, then we'll have a discussion. Will somebody move that, please, for introduction?
I'll move it.
I have a second? I'll second it. That's okay. I'll second it. That's fine. I'll be the second. That's fine. So, Mr. Slate, please explain.
Yeah, so 2 changes in this ordinance, and it relates to a number of variances that the planning board grants on site plans. The first item is parking stall size. Our ordinance contains language that calls for a parking space size of 10 by 20, and the parking board, or the planning board, is making the recommendation that that be reduced to 9 by 18. That's a standard that's been accepted for a number of years. On the 20 years or so that I've been with the township, I don't think we've ever constructed any parking at 10 by 20. The 10 by 20 would typically be something you might see in a supermarket where you get a little more space between the cars in order to navigate shopping carts, that sort of thing. And the other item, the other change that we're making that's recommended coming from the planning board is the aisle width. And you'll see a table in the draft language. It talks about the parking angle. Specifically for perpendicular parking, our ordinance currently has an aisle width of 25 feet, and 24-foot, two 12-foot lanes is a standard for your aisle. And the planning board has, to my knowledge, I don't think, again, going over the 20 years, we've approved an aisle width at 25 feet wide. It's always 24 feet, and a variance is granted for that. So it would be my recommendation to make these changes. It's fairly standard on site plans, and that's what the planning board's been approving for the last 20 years.
Okay. So again, I said out of respect for the planning board and the planners, just to review the discussion that we had, since I'm sit on the planning board, so you can understand the thinking. I brought forward the issue of larger, smaller spaces driving higher densities. Right? If you have a smaller space, you can pack more spaces into the square footage of whatever piece of land you're looking at. What Mr. Slade explained to me and the planner explained to me on that point is that the developer is required to put in a certain amount of spaces. They don't want to put in extra spaces, and correct me if I'm wrong along any of on any of these points. They don't want to put in extra spaces. So they aren't going to, it's not going to drive density per se in that they can fit more spaces in, so they're going to build a bigger building. That it just relates to the space itself, and the trade-off on that smaller space or versus larger space is that you just have more impervious surface, which affects your stormwater runoff. Is that correct? And did we, and Kathy, you can weigh in also, was there any other discussion related to the trade-offs between going
I think
larger
that's a good
spaces
point that I probably should have brought up, that the the benefit is reduced impervious coverage. With the 24-foot aisle, I mean, taking a foot off an aisle, you could be in a parking lot that's got an aisle that's a couple hundred feet long, and, taking off that 1-foot strip of asphalt, starts to get significant. And the reduced impervious coverage from the parking spot size of 10 by 20 to 9 by 18 also helps reduce, impervious coverage on the site. And what really drives, part of the discussion, as Jeff, as the mayor mentioned at the planning board, was it's really the floor area ratio or the building coverage that drives the density on a site. It's not the parking lot. It's basically the building is sized typically based upon the size of the lot and the floor area ratio, FAR, or the building coverage, and then there's a certain amount of parking that's required based upon that. So it's not as if you end up with a bigger development if you can squeeze more parking on it. It actually ends up being reduced impervious coverage overall on a site.
Very good.
The dimensions that we have, is that over the standard?
I mean, I would say it's the standard. I mean, if what governs residential development is the residential site improvement standards, you may have heard that RSIS, they require a 9 by 18 spot. And, it's fairly typical. That's what the planning board's been approving, and applicants have had to request variances, essentially on every site plan in order to construct that size parking. And we do have, 9 by 8 parking outside, in the parking lot here. It's fairly standard. I would say that, people have to be careful with their door swings. If you happen to have a car that has a big door, you can't just fling it into your neighboring car. But the benefits, I think, outweigh the detriments, and overall it's a reduction in impervious coverage.
Are these standard sizes? They're standard for residential, but are they standard also for commercial?
I would say it's a standard that's used throughout, New Jersey for commercial.
I have a legal question for you, Mr. Mills, based on the discussion tonight. So, Mr. Slate just stated that 99% of the applications that come through the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment get the variances for a smaller space, correct? If this body were to, and I'm not saying we are, but just so everybody understands, if this body were to vote against this and decide that we prefer a larger space, will the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustment, and you can answer separately because the Board of Adjustment is an independent body, will they have to take the guidance from the Township Committee, or will they still do they still have the ability themselves to override the wishes of this governing body in voting down this and still give the variances based on reasons that the applicant might provide?
The latter. The Board of Adjustment
Can you
exists
speak
for
into the mic?
purposes of allowing the relaxation of certain regulations, and the Planning Board has a companion power with respect to applications before it.
Mhm.
So even though you may pronounce that the law of the case is, 10 by 20 and aisle widths of 25, those bodies would each, given the proper showing, have the ability to allow a departure from that standard.
Mm-hmm. And would the governing body, this governing body, be able in any way to share with those land use boards our view of how we would like, parking spaces to be constructed in relation to the density and other factors? And will that have any bearing on those boards at all?
There's supposed to be kind of a Chinese wall between this body as the hiring, quote, i.e. appointing authority for these memberships on the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustment, so it would be inappropriate, in my opinion, for us to try and communicate some edict or thinking other than through the adoption or not of ordinances.
Okay.
May I
Do you understand that? Yes.
My concern is for the residents, my concern is for the senior citizens. You're talking a situation where 10 by 20 is what we have now, talking about going to 9 by 18. But down the road, the 5 of us may not be here. And so if they want to go from 9 to 8 to get more stuff in, for the builders to have a greater ability to fit more parking in, I think that's onerous. I feel it's very, very improper for us to penalize our citizens by putting them into smaller and smaller spaces. Now, I know that the Planning Board and or the Board of Adjustment always agrees in 95% of the cases, as Jim said, to allow this sort of variance from the norm down to 9 and 18. I say that we keep it at 10 and 20 and then give the appropriate body the ability to take it down to 9. But I'm afraid if we give them the ability to say 9, God only knows in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it'll be 8 by 16. And that's my point.
Yes.
So with regard to that, even now being at 10 and 20, if the Planning Board wanted to go down to 8 and issue a variance, they can. So by us just making the adjustment to what the standard is, which is being used throughout the state, and it's being approved every single time, I think it just saves time for the Planning Board having to go through issuing another variance. In listening to what Mr. Slayton just stated, I don't see a major issue of it going from 10 to 8, 9 to 8, because 9 is the standard. So that's why I was just asking, was 10 the standard at some point, and that's the reason why we had it. And if everything is being done at 9, then I don't see a major reason why we should make that adjustment just to alleviate a variance that has to be issued every time.
Mr. Slate, do you happen to know both the average car length as well as the maximum car length these days? Like, what's the length of a Suburban? Would you happen to know?
I honestly don't know offhand. I'd have to measure.
What's that?
I wouldn't say Suburban's an average car.
No, I'm just saying that, but that would be the max. I'm just saying, just so we know what the max is.
Mr. Quinn, I think that's from my cousin Vinny.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, we haven't taken a vote, but I wanted to throw out an alternative that I thought, actually, do you want to make some comments first before I throw out my alternative? Or should I throw out my alternative first and?
Go ahead, throw it out.
So my alternative, would be, that I think would satisfy you and satisfy others, is that we keep the space width at 10 feet so that people can get out, but we shorten the space depth to 18 feet as being recommended, and narrow the aisle width from 25 to 24 as being requested and as a standard, but keep the space width at 10 feet to give the people that need it the space they need to get in and out of their cars. I don't know if that's a reasonable compromise for everybody. I wanted to throw that out.
Because it's the people who are opening the doors who don't have room if somebody parks a little bit too much on one side or the other.
I get it.
And the fact of the matter is that I would like to keep it at 10 all the time. I agree that there shall be circumstances where it shall be ameliorated by a petition from the builder to make it 9 or whatever it happens to be. But I would go along with that if we took it and did 10 and 18.
So that would get at some of the issue, environmental issues of having less impervious coverage, less runoff from impervious surface, but still give people the width that they need to get in and out of their cars. Anybody would like to comment on that before we amend the motion?
Yeah, I have a question. So an applicant makes a proposal, and which takes precedent? Like, if supposing we were to enact this as a local ordinance, I mean, we have an existing local ordinance for 10 by 20, but basically that never gets approved. People go with the standard. So now we'll have a different, like, hypothetically, if we had a different local standard, how would that play out when the applications come before the board? The board can still...
Variance will be requested for the 9-foot wide spot, and most likely would be granted.
Yep.
So it's...
So we might as well not pass anything. It's either, it's a great idea, Mayor, that you had, but I think by doing something like that, it's still going to require a variance and it's still get approved the way that
Well, I can tell you that, well, this year at least, myself and Deputy Mayor Wilson sit on the planning board. I don't know who will be sitting on it next year, but might be two of us that are up here, and we're all part of the discussion tonight, and we can weigh in at the planning board level, at least not at the Board of Adjustment, with the discussion from tonight and the governing body's desire to keep a 10-foot wide space. If the other people on the planning board want to vote in favor of a variance that the two people from the governing body are against, that's their prerogative, as with any variance. But that's a way that we could show what our feelings are, at least at the planning board.
Yeah.
I see everybody's point. I mean, these boards can do really whatever they want, and we have to make sure that they just have good judgment on these things. But if Mr. Slate might relay our discussions at some point if this ever comes up down the road, that would be nice. But
I have one last comment. I will say also, this was a recommendation in the master plan review. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, to me, there's significance in that required the entire planning board.
My only question is, if that was, and I could be wrong, if that was approved in the planning board or in the master plan, why do we have to vote on it now? Why are we
It was approved in the master
regurgitating
plan
this?
review to bring an ordinance forward.
Oh, okay.
there's a lot of things in the master plan that haven't been promulgated.
Okay.
So, with that said, just to be clear, within the ordinance, Jim, there's a number of numbers with regard to aisle width depending on the angle of the parking.
Correct.
Aisle width or parking space width?
No, aisle width.
No one's proposed a change in...
Yeah, no, the aisle width is being reduced from 25 to 24.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I just heard the stall width. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we've been discussing the stall width, but the aisle width is part of this part of the ordinance. So I just want to make sure that our discussion with, I know the answer, but I just want to make sure that discussion relating to space width doesn't affect in any way, based on the different angles, the aisle width. I don't think it should.
No, and those other aisle widths for the angled parking are industry standards.
Mm-hmm.
But they are not changing.
Okay. So, Mr. Mills, what is the appropriate way that, so, is there a consensus on the governing body to change the aisle width to 20?
If the maker and seconder of the motion accept a friendly amendment, we're good. If they don't, then we would have to have the amendment receive a second and be put to a separate vote prior to the motion in chief.
Okay, so I put then to Ms. Wilson and Mr. Jorfi, the first and the second, correct?
We're the second.
I was the second, okay.
Yeah. So it's
So can I
obviously acceptable to you.
Okay.
Is it acceptable
So it's
to
obviously
me?
acceptable to me. Will you?
Review what the dimensions were?
Yeah, so it's to take the ordinance as presented to us, which you have in front of you, with the exception of the space width going from 9, keeping that at 10. And everything else would stay the same. Mm-hmm. That's the proposal. So, straw poll, would that be acceptable to you guys? Do you want to weigh in?
I'd prefer to just keep it as it is.
As it is?
Yeah.
Yep.
And would you prefer to keep it as it is?
I wouldn't mind keeping it as it is, but I would compromise and make the width, the length 18. Okay.
And keep the width at 10. Mr. Arvanites, what's your feeling on what would be acceptable? Keep it the way it is, or?
The way it is, I wouldn't be opposed if it was amended, but my preference is
And Ms. Wilson, might come down to you.
I'm okay with the width of 10.
Mm-hmm. And the rest of it? The reductions, as per the planning board recommendations? Or keeping the ordinance the way it is?
I'm understanding what you're proposing is simply changing the width to 10.
Keeping it at 10.
Keeping it at 10, and reducing the aisle width to 24 from 25.
Yeah.
And the space depth, we're going to change it as per the recommended ordinance to 18.
Okay. So, the question is...
So I'm going to...
The question is keep it the same and vote on it as written?
No. My recommendation, my amendment to you as the person who made the first motion, is that we keep the ordinance the way it's written, with the exception of the space width being at 10 instead of 9. That being the only change to the ordinance as proposed.
Okay.
And that would be in line... Part B, line 2.
Correct.
So the minimum stall width shall be 9 feet. We would make that 10 feet. And that would be the only word that would change in this proposed ordinance, is from 9 to 10.
Okay.
Everything else would remain the same. That is my amendment, if that's acceptable to you.
Yes.
And that's acceptable to me as the second. So that is now the proposed amendment. That's now the proposed ordinance before this body. Correct, Mr. Mills?
Correct. So now you vote on the ordinance
now we have
as amended.
Now we vote on the ordinance. Does anybody have any further comments before we take a vote?
I'll just say that I think I'd prefer to keep the spots the way they are as currently written under the previous ordinance. And my position is that larger parking spots are better for the residents, whether they're seniors or adults with kids, or they're, it's a cramped parking lot. I think more space. I understand the argument in terms of impervious surfaces, but I prefer to just keep it the same.
Very good. Any additional comments, Mr. Mancuso? No?
You mean,
I indicated...
You mean keep it the same,
leave it...
Don't change this, or don't introduce...
I'd be opposed to the ordinance.
And when you say keep it the same, you
keep
mean
the spots
existing
as...
language that's in the code right
Correct.
now, not the existing language in...
Correct.
I mean, that would be my first preference too, but I did state earlier that I would compromise to to keep the length, or to take the length from 20 down to 18.
Okay.
I would rather leave it as it is, but, no.
So the choice before you as we vote tonight is going to be to keep it as it is, or keep it as it is, but take this but keep the space width at 10
Why don't we
as the
vote-
compromise.
Why don't we vote on the two ordinances?
On the two, no,
Two thought processes.
well, the one that's before us now is the 10-foot width.
Okay.
With
The only
everything
thing
else
that
changed.
changes on
If
the
you vote,
ordinance.
if you vote no against that, which is your prerogative, then and there are 3 votes for that, then it'll remain the way it is today. And if that's the way you want to see it, you should vote the way you would like to see it.
Okay. You've had-
Is everything in order?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
we-
what the vote will be for is on an ordinance that retains the original current width of 10 feet and reduces the length to 18 feet from currently 20. Everything else.
And it
stays as-
reduces it's going to reduce the aisle width from currently 25 to 24.
Well, that's part of what's already in
Yeah,
front of them.
yeah, so the only thing that's changing, as I see in this ordinance, is, as we said, line 2 of Part B is going to change, the word 9 is going to change to 10.
Correct. That's what I was trying to.
That's the only change that I'm recommending to what's been recommended to us.
Yep, yes.
And if you do want to keep this space the way it is today, you have your prerogative to vote against it.
I indicated I would compromise, and if we're gonna compromise, I'll take the compromise, so let's vote on that.
Very good. So we're voting on the amended resolution that has the word 10 as opposed to the word 9 in line 2 of section B. Can you take a roll call, please?
Yes. No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Very good.
It's only
Yes,
introduction.
that's only an introduction. Thank you. And just for the public note, I just want to point out that we have very lively and very...
Animated discussion.
Right. That was just a vote on the amendment. Now we have to vote on the actual introduction.
No, that was the ordinance as amended. If the amendment had not been accepted by the maker and the seconder, then it would have been a vote on the amendment and then a vote on the ordinance in its either original form or its amended form.
Great.
The amendment was accepted, so that
Great.
became the sole piece of it.
Very good.
Now we're ready to move on. Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
And I just wanted to point out that over the course of this year, we've had a couple of 4-to-1 votes, and the one person has been different each time. So, that's democracy at work, and it's great that we have this discussion up here, and we have some compromise, Mr. Minke, so I thank you for that. And with that, let's move on to the next one, 2519.
Amending Chapter 57, Part 10, Article 35, Section 163, Subsection D, Paragraph 1, Subsection B of the Code of Township of Morris, which amends the riparian buffer conservation zone to be compliant with NJDEP buffer requirements.
So this goes back probably about 10 years or so ago when the township was in the process of advancing the wastewater management plan. Basically establishes the sewer service areas for the Butterworth and Woodland Sewage Treatment Plant. And as I believe we were the first municipality in Morris County to get the wastewater management, maybe the first or second wastewater management plan approved by DEP. But one of their requirements was the adoption of this ordinance for the riparian buffer conservation zone. And their draft ordinance that they requested us to adopt had a 75-foot buffer from streams. And we gave some pushback on it. They said this is what needs to be adopted. The Township Committee wanted to get the waste management plan adopted at the time, so we did add this ordinance onto our books. Since that time, the county has taken over the wastewater management plan. DEP kind of passed it off to Morris County, and the ordinance has since been cleaned up. DEP agreed. Morris County, I guess, argued with it that that buffer should be 50 feet to be consistent with DEP standards. And this is just a cleanup to be consistent with the ordinance that the county requires to be adopted with wastewater management plans that are being approved. a majority of the cases where there's buffers associated with streams or wetlands are governed by NJDEP regulations. And if the way the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment has operated over the last 10 years or so that this ordinance has been on the books, that if a permit is issued by DEP for wetlands, their standards, govern whatever buffer that happens to be. There's numbers of different buffers based upon the resource value of the wetlands or the type of stream. You could have a 300-foot buffer, you could have a 150-foot buffer, you could have a 50-foot buffer, you could have no buffer. But in this case, we recommend that the 75 feet be reduced to 50 feet to be consistent with what the county and DEP is requiring to be adopted.
I have a question. Mr. Slate, do you know when DEP changed the ruling or when they made those adjustments? How long ago was that?
I'm going to say 5 to 7 years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
When they reduced the 75 feet to 50 feet.
And just to relate to the rest of the governing body, my interpretation of the discussion at the Planning Board, and again, Kathy, weigh in, is that DEP rules in general are very strict. So when dealing with waterway, and they're getting stricter. They're getting stricter. DEP regulations are very strict with relation to waterways. And even if we were to adopt this, they would still need, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong here, they would still need to go by any DEP regulations that affected that particular stream that might be within a certain development, correct?
That's correct.
The DEP regulations would trump this in any case where the body of water was a certain classification that it would kick in the DEP regulations.
The DEP regulations trump, and typically a permit's necessary from DEP in order to establish the buffers.
Very good.
I think what DEP was after is if something falls through the crack, they still fall through the cracks. They still have a buffer.
And the other thing that we discussed at the Planning Board, and you explained to us very well, is that what this really applies to are very small waterways. You used the example of a trench in somebody's backyard, right?
Yeah.
And the ability of somebody, if we keep it at 75, somebody not being able to build within 75 feet of this trench in your own backyard because it is, in a sense, a waterway, and it reduces it to 50 feet, which allows people to build on their property generally if they so choose. But again, if it was deemed by DEP to be a waterway that was a certain classification, it would trump this ordinance anyway. So we're putting this in place really for the most, if I'm correct, the most minor of waterways that are in the municipality. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yes.
Very good.
Okay.
So, does anybody have any further questions? No.
Need a motion?
I'll introduce the ordinance, sir.
Very good. Second? Roll call, please.
Yes.
Ms. Arbaniti?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Kuchar?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Mills, 2619.
Yes, lastly, amending Chapter 95, Article 4, Section 29, Lot Regulations of the Code of the Township of Morris, clarifying the definition of non-conforming setback for bulk standards.
So this ordinance is a little more involved than the previous three that we were discussing. There's current language in the ordinance that allows a resident to expand a non-conforming structure, and I'll give an example of that. I mean, if you're in the RA-15 residential zone and a side yard setback that's typically required is 20 foot, and if a resident happened to have a non-conforming setback, say their house exists and they're 5 foot off the property line, under the current code, they could add, say it's a one-story addition that's 5 foot off the property line where it's supposed to be 20 feet, they could essentially add a second story or expand that out further, and all that would be in that side yard setback of 5 foot. They could maintain that 5 foot setback, and essentially you're increasing the volume of the nonconformity, and it's, in our view, it's not really fair to the neighbor in those particular cases where you have a non-conforming side yard setback and it's being expanded, it really should go to the Board of Adjustment, and the neighbors within 200 feet are notified, and then if they are to expand in that non-conforming side yard setback, if they're going to add a second story, at least the neighbor has the opportunity to weigh in on that. So this we discussed it with Rich Oler, the Board of Adjustment attorney, and our planner, and they said this language is pretty unusual, and they recommended that it be changed. So we changed the language to require that any expansion of a non-conforming setback would require Board of Adjustment approval. Essentially, the neighbors would be notified, and they'd have to seek approval from the board. They do have the ability to construct an addition. If I use that same example in the RA-15 zone, the required side yard setback is 20 feet. Their existing house happens to be at 5 feet. They could construct an addition if they wanted to add a second story, but it would have to meet the required setback. So that addition would have to be set back 20 feet, and then they could expand it, which is pulling building permits. They would not have to go, to the Board of Adjustment. But if they did want to expand within that setback area, they'd have to go to the Board of Adjustment. So hopefully I'm clear, and I did not confuse everyone with
Right.
I
got it because I got it because
what you laid out is in conformity with what most local zoning ordinances do provide.
Right.
Ours was unusual.
And I think Jim's last explanation, the example he gave really explains what we're trying to do. That if an existing house happens to be within the 5 feet of the side yard where 20 is required, they have to go to the 20 for whatever addition they want if they just want it to go through engineering. But if they want more than the 20 feet, and if they want to reduce the side yard setback, they have to go for a variance, which seems very appropriate.
Yes.
And if the neighbor comes out and says it's okay with them and says that before the Board of Adjustment, then the Board of Adjustment can take that as part of their view of the case, correct?
Correct. They may still require some buffering or, other things that they feel are appropriate in order to kind of soften the encroachment, so to speak. But better that it's, in my view, to go to the Board of Adjustment and make sure the neighbor's aware of it.
Very good.
Need a motion?
So moved. We have a second, please? Thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Arvedini?
Yes.
Mr. Garber?
Yes.
Ms. Mercurio?
Yes.
Wilson? Yes.
Yes. So all four of these ordinances will be up for adoption, a second reading, and further consideration at our October 16th meeting. Next on the agenda, we have resolutions. And we already pulled resolutions 174-19 and 175-19. I wanted to request that since 177-19 was a late addition and wasn't on the agenda yesterday, I would like to vote on that separately so we can explain it to the public appropriately. And I also wanted to pull, which one is the one for Brian McNally?
172-19.
172-19. So I would like to move, if I could, 165 through 171, then include 173 and 176, that grouping. Would that be okay? Thank you. A second?
Second.
Do we need a roll call?
Yes. Mr. Arvedini?
Yes.
Mr. Garber?
Yes.
Ms. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Guzman?
Yes. Now I pulled 172-19 because I wanted to highlight what we're trying to do here, and that is a name change at Greenfield at Harlan Park to Captain Brian McNally Field at Harlan Green Park. We have Kevin McNally, who's the father of Brian here, but I wanted to ask Mr. Jorpy to explain the reasons for us doing this.
Sure. Thank you, members of the Township Committee, Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, Mr. Quinn and Mr. Folsch, for your support in renaming Harlan Green Field at Harlan Green Park to Captain Brian McNally Field at Harlan Green Park. I believe personally that as a community, the parks, plaques, and monuments we have throughout our town should memorialize those whose actions, character, and legacy we hope to have live on through current and future generations here. By rededicating this field in the neighborhood where Brian McNally spent time growing up, we will encourage our youngest generations to not only pursue their aspirations, but also provide them with the encouragement to give back, just as Brian's legacy inspires us all to do. I'm looking forward to dedicating this field. Thank you, Kevin, for being here for the passing of the resolution, and I look forward to the months to come when we're able to dedicate it in person.
All right, so passing this resolution tonight allows us to do the renaming of the park, and we're going to be holding a ceremony for that at a date that is convenient for everybody. And at our October 16th meeting, when Mrs. McNally can be here as well, we're going to have a presentation of a plaque to them. So with that said, will somebody move 172-19?
So moved.
Second. There's no money involved, so it's just a voice call, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Then last is 177-19, resolution determining the form and other details of a $13 million, $104,000 general obligation bond, consisting of $12,343,000 of general improvement bonds and $761,000 of pool utility bonds of the Township of Morris, and providing for that sale. So I'm going to ask Mr. Quinn.
There's actually two ordinances.
There's actually two ordinances related to that.
Two resolutions, I'm sorry.
I just see
176 and 177.
Both related.
They're related.
They're related. Okay. So can you take us through those?
Certainly, sir. Each year, the township has a capital improvement program where money is put into the budget. We put down 5%, and then we plan on going out to bond for the additional 95% of the funds. As we get into going out to bond sale is a very expensive proposition, so we usually wait 5 to 7 years. We use what I call band anticipation notes to fund these projects on the in-between years. The last time we went out to bond sale was in 2014, so all the ordinances for the capital improvement program, which we would go out to bond for 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2019, it is now time to go out to bond, and that's on a recommendation from our financial advisors due to the low interest rates. Originally, we had planned to do this next fall, but with the falling interest rates and looking to take advantage of that, we've moved that up to moving it forward and doing it this year. So as of looking forward to all of those ordinances that are listed in the resolution, and this really deals with the general fund, and it deals with the swim pool utility, and that's how it's broken out. We'll continue to work with bond counsel for the anticipated sale going out at the end of October, and the closing in the beginning of November, and taking that as all of those band notes and going out to the bond sale. And then from that point forward, we'll be making those bond payments and the interest payments for the next 10 or 12 years.
Very good.
Do we have any anticipated number of what the anticipated?
We're thinking somewhere under 2% is what we're certainly hoping for.
And the way it was explained to the Finance Committee is we get a refund of the premium on the bond, correct?
And you're talking about a refunding bond.
That's
different than what we spoke about.
Different than what we spoke about. Okay. Very good.
Interesting, too, if I may add, sir, that the Fed cut the discount rate today by 25 basis points, but the indication was that this would be the last one. I'm not sure I believe it, but that's what the scuttlebutt was on TV most of the day.
Okay. Very good. Does anybody have any questions on the resolution? Good. So will somebody move resolution 176-19, 177-19? Very good. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Durfee?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci? Mrs. Wilson? Yes.
Yes. Next is consent calendar attachment A. Will somebody move that as published?
So moved.
I have a second. Thanks. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Very good. Standing committee reports. Who would like to start? Mr. Arvanites.
Bring to the attention of the committee, received the joint court revenue report, and not that the court is to be used to create any revenue, but based on last year's numbers, we've been seeing more cases than the previous year at the same time, almost 2,500 26,000 more cases this year versus last year. And as far as the revenue is concerned, I believe the revenue is up a little bit from last year as well, but the court is moving a lot of cases through it, and it's seeing a lot more than it has in the past. Also wanted to state that we've had a successful pool season, and looking forward to having another successful and safe pool season next year. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Thank you. I'm happy to report that our Environmental Commission has taken steps to support our participation in the regional effort that's underway to ban single-use plastic bags. At last week's Environmental Commission meeting, a subcommittee was formed to take several actions, including communicate with our business community, review the model ordinances that the coalition has provided, and make advisory recommendations as to content that would work for us, and then to summarize their findings and recommendations in a report that they will present to us here at our October meeting on October 16th. I'm also happy to report that representatives from Unity Charter School, including staff, parents, and students, will work with the members of the subcommittee to do the outreach with our business community, and they will continue to work with us to support our implementation efforts in the days ahead. Unity is really a great partner in this initiative in particular. I thank them for their support and their willingness to help, and I look forward to continuing to work with them on other initiatives in the future. And then as far as the Transportation Standing Committee, I'm happy to report that we've received several applications from residents who are interested in serving on our newly formed Transportation Advisory Committee. We encourage anybody who's interested to submit an application right away. Our goal is to have the appointments ready for approval at our October meeting, and then to get the committee underway and the meeting started as soon as possible after that. Committeeman Jorfi and I, and probably Mr. Quinn as well, will be doing the interviews shortly. We need to schedule that. And for any resident who's interested in applying, you can get the volunteer application on the home page of our website. Click on Services, and then Volunteer Application. And anyone who's interested in more information about the specific projects that the Transportation Advisory Committee will be doing can reach out to Mr. Quinn, who will provide that upon request. And we're really excited to have this committee up and running, and look forward to its work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jorfi?
Thanks, Mayor. For the Communications Committee, be on the lookout for a fall newsletter, which will be mailed out to residents in the coming weeks. Included in this newsletter is important information about recycling standards, community events, and some safety tips from our fire and police departments. For the Infrastructure Committee, I just wanted to thank the Police Department for the recent enforcement of a railroad crossing at Common Station, and for them providing safety information to residents and commuters about crossing the train tracks at Common Station. And also, in regards to Common Station, there have been recent upgrades or work on the gutter system there at the building. I'm not sure, Mr. Quinn, is that still being worked on, or is that completed for the gutters?
Getting the quotes there and the determination that we're coming back to is whether to patch them to keep their historic value or put in something different.
Great. So I'll be talking to Committeeman Mancuso and Mr. Quinn to meet in the coming weeks to go over matters for the Infrastructure Committee. So those are all my committee reports.
Thank you.
I qualified for that committee because I spent 38 years taking that train from Compensation to Hoboken. I have two things, Mr. Mayor. I was just so proud of our police committee and the six police people that we brought in tonight, 2 captains, 2 patrolmen, and 2 probationary people. We interviewed each of them, the 4 of us, including the chief, Mr. Quinn, Mr. Grazel, and the chief himself, and it was just amazing, their bearing, their mien, their manner, their ability to communicate. I couldn't have been more proud, and especially these two young boys here. I think they were 22 and 23. I said to myself, I wish I could speak that well when I was that age too. So that's all I have there. And then Mr. Quinn made the report for the Finance Committee on our bonds, so I thank you, sir, for doing that. Okay.
Thanks. Just to reiterate what Mr. Mancuso said, he and I are on the police committee. The police committee has spent a lot of time in interviews in the past month. We had an extensive interview with both the captains. Even though they are employees, the police committee did interview them to make sure that they were fit for duty as captains before making the recommendation that they get the promotion. So those were very lengthy and extensive interviews about their history at the department and all the things that they've done. And then the 4 other interviews we did with the 2 new patrol people, a patrolwoman and patrolman, and the two young men who are going to be going through the police academy now as a probationary officer. So we've been busy with that. And just to add on to Mr. Arbanese' report on the court committee, the other thing that's happened with the courts is we have a new court administrator. So Frank Champy, who is the long-serving administrator for our joint court and was very instrumental in making this joint court successful and making it the best in the state of New Jersey. A lot of that credit goes to Frank. He has retired, and I wish him well. And we have a new court administrator, and her name is Dawn Algier. Very good. So I want to let you know. And that's all I have as well. And so with that, we will move on to Township Committee comments. Okay, does anybody have any additional comments they'd like to make? We'll start down there.
Okay, I just want to thank again the members of the committee for supporting the resolution we passed tonight and rededicating Harlan Green Park. As many of you know in the audience, and those of you who do not know, Captain Brian McNally was a true public servant and demonstrated his commitment to his community, his state, and his country throughout his life. Not only growing up in Morris Township, he served Morris Township and our neighbors as a volunteer firefighter with the Morris Township Fire Department at Fairchild Fire Company and as an EMT with the Morris Minutemen. After graduating the Citadel, Brian served our country by enlisting in the Marine Corps and completing a tour of duty in Afghanistan. After 4 years of active duty, Brian became a New Jersey State Trooper and protected the state he knew and loved. As a testimonial to his dedication to the people of New Jersey and to our community, I think memorializing Brian through this park rededication is something that will be able to really encourage young generations in Morris Township to live up to his legacy. So thank you. And just lastly, I can't not plug Hillside Host Company's fundraiser, but our annual Oktoberfest is October 5th from 2 to 8 p.m. at Hillside Firehouse. Family and friends are welcome. We have live music. It's a great way to show support to your community. So thanks.
Thank you, sir. If you saw the resolutions tonight, we allocated $55,000 to Teen Pride. We've been doing that for very many years. It's Miss Kathleen Highland's innovation, and she has been very, very active in doing this. And we, along with Morristown and the Morris School District, each contribute a certain amount of money. But the sad news is that I lost my very good friend Tony Bucco this week. Tony Bucco and I were close enough to have run against each other in 1997 for his state Senate seat, which he won and I lost. But we have remained friends. It was the cleanest campaign. It was just totally above board, and we had become very, very friendly since then. So I'm very, very sad for what's occurred.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for pointing out the Teen Pride monies. It's a very important organization in the community. Ms. Arbanese, nothing else? Ms. Wilson?
Yes. I have 2 things. Well, tonight is the debut of our first venture into using the ceiling camera as a source of video footage for this meeting. I want to thank our IT department and also Will Sisti. They're working together to do the editing and the production work that's needed to upload to YouTube and to Cablevision. So it's the first time, it's an experiment, and we'll be evaluating all aspects of the project along the way, and we welcome any feedback anyone may have. And it'll be interesting to see how it all works out, so we'll keep you posted. And I also wanted to mention that this past weekend, my daughter, her husband, and their 18-month-old son, who's my grandson, they visited me for a few days, and one of the highlights of the time we spent together was we toured the farm at Foster Field. What a great family outing. There was something for everyone. My little 18-month-old grandson was enthralled by all the animals, especially Carl the cow, or steer. And I was inspired by Carolyn Foster's life story and this little cottage that she apparently built on her own. I was amazed to learn that. I did not know that. And it stood out in contrast to me to one of the quotes I saw. There was also a transportation exhibit there, Welcome to Transportation in the 20th century, early 20th century. And there was a quote in there by her that said, when I was growing up, women had nothing. All we could do was sit in the piano bench and sew or crochet. And I was really struck by visiting Foster Fields. She changed that. And I'm so glad that she had the foresight to preserve the farm for future generations. It's beautiful, it's historic, and it speaks to her character as a person, and it's quite a jewel of a site for our town. So I really enjoyed it, and that's it. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I want to again extend my personal condolences to the family of State Senator Anthony Bucco, as I said, who served in that position for 21 years in this district of Morris County, and that he had previously been a Boonton alderman, mayor, freeholder, and state assemblyman. And over his years, he dedicated many years of his life to public service. It's not an easy job being an elected official at times. I know how much work all of us put in here, and I can only imagine the amount of hours that Senator Bucco put in over the course of his career, whether you agree with his position or not. His positions on certain issues or not, he dedicated a hell of a lot of time to the people of this district, and I just want to recognize his years of service. I want to thank Rabbi Nesson again for leading us in that very nice 9/11 memorial reading. I again want to congratulate Captain Shearer, Captain Peruso, new Patrolman Ridley, Patrolwoman Ridley, Patrolman Macarico, and the two young men, Steve Wint and Joe Pisciotto, who are going to be going through the police academy. And I did want to personally thank Chief DiCarlo. And we've said this before, the quality of people that he brings to us at the police committee is just tremendous. I don't know how he finds the cream of the crop in everybody he brings us, but Peter and I are just impressed time and time again of the quality of candidates we have for our police department here in Morris Township. And I feel very comfortable with all of everything that we did tonight and how they're going to serve us going forward. So thank you, Chief DiCarlo.
Mr. Mayor, they're both residents of Morris Township, probationary.
Right, both the probationary, yes. So hopefully they will establish their homes here and be long-serving. My feel-good story of the month is that 2 Sundays ago, because I know that Jim likes the feel-good stories. 2 Sundays ago, I had the honor of being the official ribbon cutter at the opening ceremonies to the 2019 Normandy Park Olympics. And Normandy Park is a neighborhood off of Normandy Parkway in Morris Township. This is a neighborhood event for both kids and adults, which featured events such as the 100-yard dash, basketball shooting, an egg toss, and many other fun games. But my favorite part of the whole thing was when everybody lined up on the street and marched down for about a half a block all together with the Olympic music playing in the background on somebody's scooter as they walked along. And then we went into somebody's backyard that had been formed into a makeshift stadium where I was able to cut the ribbon. It was really just such a wonderful neighborhood event that made me feel good again about living in the town that we do and the things that people do for each other. So I just love the parents who put on that event for their little community there. 2 weeks ago, Deputy Mayor Wilson, Administrator Tim Quinn, and I had the honor of hosting Congresswoman Mike B. Sherrill as she toured the facilities at the Seeing Eye on Washington Valley Road. It was a very nice visit, and the Congresswoman presented the Seeing Eye with a congressional proclamation that's going to be hanging on their wall. And I'd also like to add that the Seeing Eye now has the newest street and the latest addition to our street map in Morris Township, as their new address of 1 Seeing Eye Way is now official. And I knew it was official because I plugged it into Google Maps, and it actually came up as 1 Seeing Eye Way. So we officially have a new street address for the Seeing Eye as 1 Seeing Eye Way. September is National Preparedness Month. Our town and our state has had its share of storms and power outages over the years. National Preparedness Month is recognized each September to promote family and community disaster and emergency planning now and throughout the year. And the 2019 theme is Be Prepared, Not Scared. And I urge residents to go to the government website for more information on what they can do to be prepared for any future emergency. That website address is www.ready.gov. I should have reported this in the police committee reports, but you'll see around town electric signs to remind residents to lock their cars and their homes at night. We still do have the occasional theft from a car that has been left unlocked, so we all must be vigilant. And I admit that I sometimes leave my car unlocked at night too, and then wake up in the morning and hope everything's okay. But we all need to be vigilant in locking our cars and homes at night just to be safe. And lastly, the Jewish New Year of Rosh Hashanah is approaching in about 10 days, and I wanted to wish all the Jewish families in our community a happy and healthy New Year. And that's all I have. So next, we have an additional public commentary part. Does anybody else from the public have anything that they would like to ask or make comment on? Please approach the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Diane Holland, 26 Northbridge Place. Several things have been answered, like the camera, so thank you on that. I've been asked from Liberty Greens, where I live, to inquire about the pothole repair under the, or very close to the Punch Bowl Railroad Bridge. It's on the, I guess that's the south lane heading toward Madison Avenue. It's chronic, and it seems to be repaired every year. Is there any possibility that there's a cause for this pothole issue other than snow plowing and salt?
Mr. Quinn? It's usually water that gets in there and expands during the winter that causes the potholes, but we'll take a look at it.
Okay, because I also understand that it has been reported so far this year.
Reported and repaired or not repaired?
Not repaired. Okay. Then, Mr. Quinn, I apologize, I've had this chronic cough. You may recall we have discussed the municipal agreement for the town with townhome communities for lighting and fire hydrants and snow plowing and things like that. We did, for one period, we were reimbursed for leaf pickup, and that ceased. Now we have a question as to whether or not the township will still collect leaves if we put them along Punch Bowl Road.
Yes.
Do you know how many pickups we would get in a season?
It's usually somewhere between 4 and 5, depending on, they go by sectors. So if you look at the sectors, you can see when they come through, and then the municipal messenger goes out when we move from sector to sector.
Okay.
But don't put them in the road.
Understood, but we have a lot of lawn there.
Okay. Don't put them in the road, because it's a narrow street, and
there is a section, though, as you're heading down toward Flowham Park, where there is that cutout, and where
that's fine.
That would be okay?
Yeah.
In that section of the road?
Belongs to property.
It belongs to the property?
But the College of St. Elizabeth? I mean, it's just as a charity?
No, I don't know.
Sure. Put them on your property. You can't put them on another person's property.
No, of course not. What I'm saying is, there is a section where Punch Bowl gets wider and then gets narrower as you get to the corner of St. Elizabeth. And you cannot drive in that section. Would that be acceptable? It's between...
Is it Liberty Green property?
I don't know. All right. Okay.
Then the answer is no.
Okay, fine.
If you have a designated place where we can easily pick them up, we will do that.
Okay. I was going to comment about Collinsville, but that has been addressed. I was here Monday night, and I noticed that the street lights in the town hall parking lot are of various intensities, and the light bulbs have been replaced perhaps at different times. They're almost different colors. I didn't know if there was any intention to bring them back so they're all uniform. You observed that? I think there's one that's out.
I believe they fixed that one, or they were fixing that one today, and then the other one they're adjusting the timers for the change in the daylight timing, but there's no other plans to do anything different.
But I can ask Mr. Jorfi to take that up at the next Infrastructure Standing Committee. Would you do so, please? Very good, thank you.
Thank you. And the last question has to do with the parking space conversation that went on. When someone files a variance from what was our standard of 10 by 20 to have them reduced to 9 by 18, is there a fee for that to file a variance?
There's an application fee to whichever body the application is being presented.
Plus whatever cost the person may incur if they decide to have legal.
The fee is not it's not tied to the number of variances requested. You know, it's just an application fee.
Application fee. Does anybody know what that is?
It's in the ordinance. It's several $100s plus payments into escrow accounts for engineering review and legal review and that sort of thing. So it's not an inexpensive process.
Right. So I look at this from the perspective of, from what Mr. Slate said, almost every single one of these applications is approved. So are we backhandedly taxing our builders or homeowners or whomever is looking for this variance when we automatically, or the bodies, automatically approve them anyway?
I don't know if this is responsive to your question, but typically for those kinds of projects, the applicant is there for subdivision or site plan review, or typically site plan review wherein the parking is displayed as part of the application. So they may be adjusting the stall sizes, you know, as a consequence of the application itself. I don't know. I doubt anybody would come in just simply to seek relief from parking space. It would be part of some larger application.
And there's just one fee for no matter how many variances you ask for. I do want to point out that, as Mr. Mills said, that there's an escrow account, and the more variances you ask for, the more time it's going to take from the professionals to review them and to comment on them at the hearing, and they pay for the professional's time. So the bigger the case, the more fees they're going to pay towards professional time, township professional time.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So thank you for answering that. Okay. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public like to be heard?
Hi, George Quillen, 7 Bishop Court, and I just have one comment, and it's about the parking space requirement. Back in, I think it was 2017, when the last master plan review was taking place, I commented extensively as a member of the public, and I remember commenting on this particular requirement, and I said, why is it that we want to reduce our requirement for parking spaces just because the state has adopted something. Didn't make sense to me, and it still doesn't make sense to me. I think by adopting a more permissive standard, you're taking power away from the planning board and the Board of Adjustment to disapprove certain applications that may be objectionable for various reasons. And I just haven't heard an analysis based on size of cars. You know, if you have two Chevrolet Suburbans that want to park across from each other, what is the consequence of having a 20-foot length versus an 18-foot length, or a 9-foot width versus a 10-foot width? I believe in a prior meeting that I attended, someone said, well, at a grocery store you would probably want a 10-foot width. Well, I think that you're taking the power away from the boards to say, for a particular application, I think a 10-foot width is more appropriate. Or an 18-foot or a 20-foot length, I'm sorry. You're already putting in a 10-foot width. So anyway, I'm still on, my opinion is it would be better not to approve the ordinance that you have introduced. So I agree with Mr. Jorfe's position and Mr. Mancuso's original position on that, and I would ask you to reconsider and to think about particulars of particular vehicles and particular situations before adopting a standard that came from another body. So that was it.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Quillen. Thank you for those comments. And I just remind you that this was just an introduction tonight, and there's going to be a public hearing before a second vote at our October 16th meeting. And if you could return on October 16th and make those comments again, while we have the public hearing, the official public hearing on that, we'd welcome you back. And there's opportunity again for us to think about this for a month. This is not a final vote tonight. And if people want to vote against it in a month's time, it's their prerogative, even if they introduced it tonight, to vote against it on October 16th.
Okay.
Just so you understand.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, that I move that we close the public portion. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good. Next is consideration of monthly reports. The following reports for the month of September 2019 are on file in the office of the Township Clerk and the Township and Township Administrator. We have reports from the Tax Collector, Finance, Police, Joint Court, and Joint Library. So those need to be moved?
Move as circulated.
Move as circulated, please. Have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And claims for payment. List of bills and vouchers this month total $19,786,622.68. And I remind everybody again that we are the tax collector for the school district, for the county, for the library, and open space, and the rest of the world. That's why the number is so big. We collect everybody's taxes and then dole them out. So will somebody move that? Second, very good. Roll call, please.
Mr. Arvanites. Mr. Dorothy. Mr. Mancuso. Mrs. Wilson. Yes. Mayor Christian.
Thank you. May I have a move to adjourn the meeting? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. We will reconvene October 16th, 2019 at 5 p.m. for closed and 7 p.m. for the regular meeting. Thank you.